Okay.
All righty, let me go ahead and call the meeting to order. Attending this evening, we have select board members Barney Arnold, David Modell, and Alan Lewis. While I'm speaking, and Kate Reed.
Kate is on. Kate is on.
So and we also, I see Peggy Wang is here, and Tim Goddard, the town administrator, Jen Gibbons, the assistant to the board, Christina, Jeannie, and Mary Lynn are here also. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll read the agenda. At 7 o'clock, we'll have community input. At 7:15, 7:05, the LEPC update, and I don't see Chief Fisher here yet. I don't know if he's coming or not. If not, I guess I can do that. 7:15, the town clerk's request. 7:45, treasurer collector requests. These are both budget items. 8:15, long-term budget priority discussion, and I don't anticipate we will be just doing all of those discussions tonight. When I sent that out earlier this week, it was really, or last week, it was just to suggest these are things we might talk about, and perhaps do one at each meeting, not 6 of them at one meeting. But we can talk about which ones we might like to do first. 9:15, the town administrator's report. 9:25, liaison reports. 9:40, approval of minutes and warrants, and 9:45, tentative adjournment. And as usual, if we have to, we can take things a little out of order. The ones we have to do on time, and I see Peggy's already here, but I'm assuming Kim will be along to do hers, so we'll save that time as a time certain.
I figured out you're like Alan. You're like the airlines. When the restriction came in that they were measuring on-time performance, the airlines stretched their estimated, flight duration times.
Yep.
So they always came in on time. And I think with your agenda and your time setting, you've done that.
Well, I don't actually set the times. Tim does that. So I just go on the agenda items. But okay. We'll see. Hopefully we may get done before 10 o'clock tonight. That'd be good.
Very good. Okay.
All right. Is there any community input tonight? You could just raise your hand. I don't see any. All right. Then we'll go to the LEPC report. And John Fisher is not here this evening, so I can say the LEPC has been again meeting every Monday, talking about planning, mostly recently about planning for the vaccine clinic. We did get through the fine work of Chief Fisher and especially Chief Soros. We took delivery of free 4,000-pound caissons, which will keep our new structure that's on a truck somewhere heading this way to give for vaccinations. We'll keep it from flying away on the wind and keeps us from having to drill 35 1-foot deep holes in the parking lot of the Congregational Church, which they didn't seem worried about, but we were certainly worried about it. And so we're glad we don't have to do that. But they found a free source of these. The Public Works Department and Chief Soros went over and picked them up, I think, yesterday. And they've been delivered. They're now sitting in the parking lot of the Congregational Church waiting for the structure to come. And as soon as it's in, they'll be secured. And that's a really nice way to do it. And we'll get the spikes anyway in case we move it to some place it doesn't have a hard surface on it that we have to drill holes in. And the LEPC has been really trying to decide what its duties are versus the Board of Health and the vaccine subcommittee, and that all kind of got straightened out yesterday, I think pretty much to everybody's satisfaction. And it looks like phase 2 will begin on February 1st. That's for people 75 and over. But it looks like we will be limited to perhaps 100 doses of vaccine. That's not going to do much for us. But it's apparently there's a real problem with that. So we'll put in for it, see what we get. It looks like the 9th of February might be the earliest that we get some of that. We don't know yet, but the applications have been sent in. The Board of Health has been doing a good job of crossing their I's and dotting their T's. So we're all prepared to go whenever the vaccine's available. We'll be ready to receive it and be ready to administer them as quickly as possible. So we'll leave it for that. We ask people, please refrain from calling the COA or the Board of Health wondering where the vaccines are. They don't know, and as soon as we do get definitive information on the availability of the vaccines, everybody will be notified, and we'll go from there. On the other hand, if you are, and I'm looking at the people who are attending this meeting, I think there's no problem there. If you don't have an email address with the COA and you don't have a computer and you don't read the mosquito, let the COA know so they can call you and tell you when things are available. But I don't see anybody on here who that would really apply to. So that's about it for LEPC. We're going to be continuing to meet on Mondays. The Board of Health and the Vaccine Subcommittee also just generally meets on Monday night. They may actually have an extra meeting this week, but I can assure everybody that the planning is going ahead forthwith, and we're doing everything humanly possible to try to get the vaccines here as quickly as possible. But it's a little bit of a hassle, frankly. But other states, I was talking to my brother in Connecticut today, and he and his wife have already been vaccinated. So it's a little frustrating for Massachusetts. Anyway, okay. Peggy, if you're ready to go, we can take you now, unless there are any questions. Hearing none. Peggy, you're on.
Oh, great. Thank you for letting me join the meeting tonight. I had sent out something that the reason I'm requesting the time with you is because I'd like to have a salary adjustment for the town clerk in the FY22 budget. The current salary for the town clerk is $65,488, and it's my contention that this really isn't a livable wage for living in the town of Carlisle, which as town clerk and elected official, I have to live in the town of Carlisle. And Tim Goddard had suggested that I compile some data from other town clerks and communities, which I sent to you. And thank you, Kate. She kind of spiffed it up, and then I think she circulated it to everybody else.
She did.
That shows a comparison of salaries. I wasn't able to get every town to respond, but mostly the ones that are in the community that the personnel board uses, all but 2 responded. And I'm sure you can see that most of the town clerks that are used by the personnel board are elected, and most of them in the contiguous communities are appointed. And the hours are vary. I'm paid for 35 hours. Others are as low as 27 hours in the some of the smaller communities. Others are a total of 40 hours. I did not get any information on how many assistants they had. If they had 1 assistant town clerk, and then any other help to manage everything that goes on in the town clerk's office. We here have an assistant town clerk that works 24 hours a week. And we currently don't have any senior volunteers. So we're getting a little bit behind in our filing because that's generally what they've done. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm just, I'm asking for some sort of review and some adjustment to the salary.
Okay, Thank you, Peggy. Are there any questions for Peggy? Kate, you're muted. Yep.
Are all these, are all the town clerks also notaries? Do you know?
Yeah, I believe they are, yes.
Okay. And are you working towards your notary?
Yes, I am.
Okay. When do you think you're going to have that?
I'm hoping by the end of February.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Any other questions for Peggy? Peggy, have you been to the finance committee with this yet, or are you scheduled to?
I'm with the finance committee tomorrow at 4.
Tomorrow. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Barney?
Peggy, yeah, I didn't have a chance to do the math myself. Do you, I mean, I think you would have added it on here if you had it, but the sort of per hour, it's a little hard to
yeah.
make all the comparisons, you know.
Barney, that's what I did actually. I did all the hourly rates. You didn't get a copy because I did ask Tim to circulate those. So
Oh, well, I've got
I did.
the spreadsheet from Peggy. Well, not spreadsheet, but you know, kind of a list from Peggy dated 1/22.
right.
Yeah, but
And then,
Kate sent one with which added the hourly rates.
Oh, whoa. I haven't looked at that. I mean, sorry, I didn't, maybe I must have overlooked it.
let me send you that right now. How's that?
Okay.
I think it was called spiffing up or something. It was an email.
That's what I called it.
No wonder I didn't open it. Sorry, Peggy.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, and Peggy, do you have any sense of I mean, how comparable the duties are of the town clerks in the other towns as compared to yours? I mean, I don't have any sense of that.
Well, town clerks' responsibilities are the same across the Commonwealth in terms of managing elections, record keeping, the census, the dog license. And, you know, the only thing that would be different are specific projects like what we're having with the management of the vault. That's something that we're doing, and I don't know that other towns also have a management of a vault. They certainly are we're all the holder of records, minutes and agendas and other reports. But no, the responsibilities are basically the same across the Commonwealth.
Mhm.
It's just that those who have larger sections, some have more licensing responsibilities, like licensings for gas stations, regulations that they have to follow up on and take care of. We don't have as much as that. The only ones that we really do are the DBA, the doing business as license, and dog license.
Mhm.
So the larger communities have more that they have to do because of the kind of, you know, they have more businesses to manage.
Yeah.
Peggy, do you have any? I know you haven't been town clerk all that long, but do you know when the last time something other than just the cost of living raise was given?
No, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Alan?
Yep.
Yep. Because the clerk is an elected position, it was not included in the wage and classification study. It couldn't be because it's an elected official. So to my knowledge, at least the past 12 or so years I've been in town, it's increased only by the cost of living adjustment that's made for the non-union employees.
Okay.
So there hasn't been any other adjustment to the clerk's salary in that time, except for the annual.
Thank you, Tim. That's very useful. Yeah.
Yep.
Good.
I just want to add, though, I've been doing some comparable towns for another project and looking at documents and document policies, and most of those policies reside with the town clerks, regardless of whether it's really a town clerk document or not. They're the ones that have been taking the lead on seeing that documents are not retained past their shred dates and in general for each department.
And so is this, if there were, would this go to the personnel committee then to, no, it doesn't.
No, because it's an elected
That's
position.
elected, okay.
The
that's what I
only
thought.
town meeting can set the salary. There's an
Okay.
article where the clerk's salary and the assessor's salaries are set.
Yeah.
It's like Article 2 or something like that,
Yeah,
because they're elected.
okay,
If Peggy were appointed, she'd be on the wage and
Gotcha.
salary chart like every
Mhm.
other employee.
got you. And so, then it would be a matter of whether or not we put forward a change in the salary to go on the warrant article for
Correct.
town meeting. Got it.
Okay.
And I had one other, shoot, it was just in my head and, so it's kind of related. Well, it definitely is related, but it's not specific to this request is, last year in the spring, we had talked about making a change in the town clerk position from elected to appointed. And we, given COVID and the need to have as brief a meeting as possible, we put that off. And then when we talked about this last fall, I think sort of pretty much for the same reason, we decided not to put that forward. I guess that's another question for us as the board.
Yeah. I should say that it's being essentially the only elected position that is paid a salary. That's one of the reasons that you might want to consider it not being an elected position going forward. But
Right.
it's but we're happy with Peggy, and I think when we discussed it the last time, in fact, the language in the article was saying that until and unless Peggy decides not to run she wouldn't have to. Well, we can't open. She still has to run for the position until. And then when she stops running for the position, that's when it would become an appointed position, because we'd have to open it up. If it's not an appointed position, we would have to open it up to everybody, and we don't want to put Peggy under that kind of pressure.
All right. Okay. Any further discussion? Alrighty.
Yeah, on that point.
Yep.
I mean, would we consider then, Peggy, your term ends, or your current term, I should say, you're in the first of 3 years?
No, this term ends at the next election,
It's
the next town
annual.
election.
Oh, it's
When's
annual?
It's annual.
Oh, I thought it was 3-year terms. Oh my God.
No, that's because I'm still filling out Mary's term.
Right.
And so that,
Okay.
Oh,
That's what it is.
that's
so in
this.
at the next town election, it would be for another 3-year term.
Okay.
So let me ask you this, Peggy. I mean, one of the reasons you're obviously a resident of the town, or you wouldn't be eligible. So I get that. And so separating that from let's separate the financial issues aside, but you did indicate, that one of the impediments, I guess, maybe that wasn't the word you used, but the fact that it is an elected position requires that it be given to a resident, and we're in a, high cost of living town. We know that. And just, again, not for your particular case and not for the time you choose to be a town clerk, but in the broad sense, do you think it should be elected or appointed?
Oh, I believe it should be an appointed position.
Okay, so that's good information.
Is your current assistant?
So I mean, my view to the select board is we should allow it. I mean, we should separate those issues. If we think it should be appointed, we should probably move to that. And I don't know if that's this year or next year, but
Well,
it's probably a further
as I
discussion.
said, whenever we go for that, I would like to make it clear that it's Peggy's job until she doesn't want it anymore. And then, because I don't want to push Peggy out of that job if that's the job she wants, my,
But
my,
moving it, Kate, moving it from,
Yeah, just, this is your.
moving it from,
Yeah, you're talking about the broad level, not
well, right, the
specific
first
to a
thing,
person.
again, I mean, any good personnel, human resource person would tell you, not a job description, a job position should not be about the individual, it's about the job, right? So we as the select board, and it doesn't have to be this cycle, I don't care, but we as the select board should determine for ourselves what the appropriate, whether the position should be elected or appointed. A separate issue, Peggy, I agree, she's doing a great job, and there's no reason not to have her do that job, and there's no reason not to compensate her, appropriately for the job she's doing. We shouldn't get that immersed in the elected versus appointed thing. If we believe that the right course of action is appointed, we should figure out a way to get to that point, get to that step at some juncture.
Okay.
I think we're all in agreement.
Thank you, Peggy. We will certainly discuss this and go forward. And as you say, you'll be meeting with the finance committee, I guess tomorrow, you said, and
Yes.
I'm sure they'll have their input as well. But thank you so much. And again, thank you for the job you do. Do appreciate
Okay,
it.
great. Thank
Yep.
you.
All right. We're a little ahead of the game, but I see that she is here. Kim, if you're ready to go, we can take your request now.
Hi, I didn't know how you do, so I figured I'd come on early in case you didn't want to leave you sitting waiting if you got finished early. So in my budget this year, I'm requesting additional hours for one of my assistants, Anish. And I think I sent you an updated, I had done my budget included in, which brought it up like over $12,950. And I said, I really got to go back through my budget, had a little more time to really kind of see what the savings have been over this year too. So the initial cost of doing this would bring my budget up 4% to $11,450. The office is just, there's just not enough full-time employees, FTEs, to cover the work in the office. As you see, there's 2.46 full FTEs, and I'm moving it to 2.66. So we're not even 3 full FTEs. And it's finance director, treasurer, collector. We do treasury, we do collection, we do payroll, we do HR, we do benefits. I'm getting to the point where I cannot sustain the level that I'm putting out. I don't have any more people to give things to. And I knew coming in, catch everything up. I've got 10 goals. I've knocked 8 of them off. And the office is still behind. A big thing is the reconciliations. And that was something that was behind with my predecessors. I think if you look at my budget, you spent $18,750 interim. Some of that was on a forensic audit, but a lot of that in FY20 was to go back and balance between the accountant and the treasurer, which is very important, the receivables. So that was, nothing is get precarious, everything is and I see that now, and I'm kind of hearing that might've been an issue with my predecessors too, after Larry, is there's just not enough time to get all the things done. And I'm finding more, like the tax taking and things like that. So it's starting to concern me. And like I said, I've got a lot of stamina and I'm going, but I'm starting to, especially with FinCom now, they want me to start doing the budget, which I would love to do and take on. I want to write policy, but if I don't do this bond refunding and I don't get the tax bills, out, and I don't get us balanced and stay up with that, those are going to become deficiencies in our audit. So what I'm asking, I'd like more, but I'd like to see if it can work with Anish, taking her out of building one day a week, her Thursday, so the 7 hours. And I've already talked to John because I didn't want to cripple his department. Anish knows the office. She's good. The tasks I want her to do are my tasks that I'm going to pass down to her. So it's a higher level work. That's why I have the $1,200 stipend in there. I believe Larry had given her a stipend. She's coming back to do work that I would do that I need to pass off to somebody. So it's less than what my assistant gets, but she needs to have some type of, leverage pay for the level of what she's doing. This isn't just clerical, work on that. I mean, I eventually, if she does the payroll, I'd like her to fund the payroll and do that. That would free me up to do other things or keep up with this pace that I'm, keeping up with. If you look down in my budget, I've tried to free up time with the girls, more so with my assistant, and that's worked. But every time I free up time for her, there's another piece that goes back in there. And if you look at lines, the equipment service line, and then lockbox and process bills, I think it's 5, 6, and 8. You'll see the equipment service line went out. That was the machine, the old stuffer machine. So that's gone. We're not stuffing our own bills. And then the lockbox number went up because we're now getting money right in the bank. Lockbox is collecting it. That's going through Century Bank. That's going great. And then the process tax bill amount went down because we're not paying for all the bills to be pre-printed and everything. So that's being done through Kelly and Ryan. So if you add those three numbers together, it came to a savings of $3,050 for the town. So I'm very proud of that. And I think that was a good use of savings. So if I didn't put out, honestly, my budget would be going down, but it's also the time that now the girls, especially Kathy, isn't sitting and opening mail, or we're taking the time to stuff and do tax bills. We've also worked on our deputy collector, that we're utilizing them for the fee that we're paying. So things are moving, but I'm seeing it after being there a year that there are just things that with 2.46 FTEs, you cannot possibly keep up to date and get the work done. I don't know what else to say with that. I see it with Priscilla too. The financial offices to me aren't staffed enough, from what I've come from experience, to be able to put people on projects and get things done. And what happens is they become a priority and the tax titles are pushed aside. And now those will be pushed aside if I'm going to do the bond refunding and if the tax bills go out. And like I said, I've been going, but I can't keep up the stamina of just, it's never going to get caught up. If I'm trying to be finance director, run a department and do all this, there's just not enough people for me to give the task to. So I'm asking that Anish come down. John has Nancy, so she's willing to take over the hours, so I'm not crippling that. And that's nice too, the continuity, because there's one, she knows all about the office. Anish loves being in building, but she loves the finance, I think, more. And she knows I need her. She's done really well recently with the Maya conversion. That's another thing. This week's all been Zooms with everything. Again, that takes time out of the office. So it's just, I want to succeed. I want the office to succeed. I want to keep moving along with all these things. I just don't have any more resources. And now when FinCom needs me, I want to do things. And I'm like, I don't have an hour in the day. So I just, and I don't know, like I said, it's nothing against anybody, and prior to me, but when I came into seeing that and looking at even what the auditors have done, and you don't want to pay auditors to come back in and, bring your, receivables, up to date. And then who's going to keep them? They should be done the 15th of every month. And that needs, continuity. I still need to, there's bank accounts that I've found that don't reconcile to the GL. So that's time. There's just all this. Plus, we need to move forward with the cash receipts module on the software. We shouldn't be doing our cash book in Excel. It should be part of Munis and the budget program. So there's just so much that the town can, evolve with, but you need resources to do that. So I guess I'm asking that you support this, and that bringing Anish in will, at least one day help to give, free up a little more of my time, or let me finish these other tasks for you. So with that said, if you have any questions, if I didn't elaborate enough,
You have already been to the finance committee, have you?
tomorrow night.
You got, oh, you're tomorrow too. Oh, they have a fun night tomorrow. Good, yeah.
Yeah, I did have a conversation with Jim because, you
Yeah.
know, there's things, you know, with that, like, I'm like, Jim, really, I want to do your budget thing, but I'm just, you know, on a wall and talking to him tomorrow. So yeah, I'm
Gotcha.
going to approach it. And I understand, that's why I went back through when I first did my budget, and there's a lot of projection in here because we're not the full year with the changes that I've made. But because we're 6 months, and I feel really confident that, you know, with the lockbox, like you'll see, you know, last year was 3 commitments, and this year now is with the motor vehicle. Now it's the taxes and the motor vehicle. So those 3 lines, like I said, I'm very, you know, I'm proud of that. I mean, I feel like that's a big savings, you know, 3,000 for things, and the time, you know, with them, like, you know, we're not, and I'm not pulling people from every department, which they were fantastic when I first came in to help stuff bills and, you know, do all that. And we're in COVID. You know, and the cost to just have a pre-printed bill is so much more expensive than a printer. They do it for like 69 cents. They just print the bill out. There's a lot of proofing, and this year was back and forth to get it all set. And I can take comments on that too, but setting it up in the first year going through it. But that's a really true savings, you know, on that. So brings my budget down a little, but I understand increasing the budget by 4% by asking for additional time for, you know, Anish, which I think she would be great. And it's an important task. Like I said, I'd love to get a senior tax worker back in there, and I guess they had somebody before, so I've lost that to, you know, stuff bills or do things like that. But this is a high level, you know, I can put her on the tax taking, or I can have her do the cash things, you know, that are really high level that I have to be confident with who's, you know, working with me on that.
Not having a senior tax worker, is that simply because people aren't requesting it?
Well, I wouldn't want anybody in there right now with COVID. My assistant was doing it before, which that may not be good in the same office too. But there was a lot going on with her family and things like that. So she stepped back saying, I've got enough on my plate. And she has you know, she's got a big load that, you know, she's got with the tax office, you know, with all the deposits and the things. So if it came back and we were comfortable, sure, instead of having, you know, every other week, you know, one of the girls or myself sitting there stuffing, you know, checks into envelopes to mail and go mail, that's a great senior, you know, tax worker, you know, thing to do. Or even just to answer the phone and divert to a different department, because a lot of the phone calls need to go to assessor or they're on warrant, you know. Our taxpayers, other than wanting to write a check in the office, really everything can be answered, you know, online or through the mail or through the Dropbox. You know, if they need to speak to me, fine, but it's really just the matter of paying an on-time or delinquent tax, you know, tax bill. And all those are up on the website. Like I said, our deputy collector, I've put that up now. We're trying to utilize him more. So we are freeing up more time, but now there's then this list that, you know, still needs to, and I do get concerned. I mean, it keeps me up at night, or I'm up at night, you know, doing it because, you know, we have the audit and we have everything else that's been pushed, you know, together. And if things aren't, you know, if your internal controls aren't there, it doesn't matter how many policies you have there, it all has to, you know, be, you know, come out together. And I've been pushing things down a little bit with the abatement process and all these other things. So I really right now have to stop and focus on the tax office. And doing this, I wish you could start tomorrow. I know it's not till July. I mean, I could use her, you know, tomorrow at 6 months off. It's like, but I just like you to support it. And I don't know your feelings, you know, with the offices. It's just, you know, it's a large office that does a lot with only, you know, less than 2.5 FTEs. That's a lot.
Okay, questions for Kim?
David, did you have something or?
Yeah, well, I guess I have 2 sets of questions. So
Sure.
I have a process question, which is, why are we hearing this? It seems to me that all that stuff is the purview of what you discussed with Finance Committee and also with Tim, since it's all under Town Hall. You know, I'm not averse to it, but I don't think the Select Board's role is to get involved in the details of a department's operational budget for the coming year until and if it rises, you know, to the level as, you know, where it's just distilled down to whether we're going to add or change the position of a noosh or some personnel board decision. All this other stuff, I appreciate it. I've been through it all myself many times with years of Finance Committee and school board. It doesn't seem like an appropriate Select Board topic. And I guess I have to defer to the others who have longer tenure on Select Board to tell me whether that's right or wrong.
Maybe I could address that. I asked Kim to come tonight, so it might be, maybe it's my fault, but you know, from past experience, I knew she was going to discuss this with the Finance Committee tomorrow night. And I didn't want the board to be kind of behind the curve that the, you know,
Yeah, okay,
increase was
maybe,
being
but-
discussed to someone's
I mean-
hours and the board wasn't aware of it.
You know, I don't know, Tim. I spent a lot of years on Finance Committee, as you know, and the body and fender work of the budget, you know, or sausage making of the budget, I think is appropriately left to the Finance Committee. And they should sort of down select, distill the issues, figure out what makes sense, and then
Yeah,
press
I
forward for the
I
select
think
board. That's my
I
view.
agree. In this case, this is more of a management thing. This is not where the position is changing in its complexion and where we would then be sending it to personnel. This is, I would say, Tim, this would be in your, wheelhouse also to.
Additional hours, do we have to go to personnel under the current structure? So.
Right, but Kim brought a lot of stuff in. So let me go move to my second point. We can come back to this. You
I was
know,
what you want. So I asked Tim and he said, before FinCom, so I figured I'd discuss my budget because it kind of went together. So.
yeah, I mean, I understand. And in your place, I would do the same because you have an audience, right? Why not? But I think the other question I want to ask, which may, also be part of this is, I've run little businesses and big businesses. And when I run little businesses, I do a make-buy decision on the value of having that internally versus externally. And to me, Carlisle in the, portfolio of towns is a little business. So all the stuff you mentioned, the compliance stuff and doing this and doing that, there's got to be services out there that can do it more cost effectively than us doing it ourselves. Why? It's not like, and I don't want to put a value judgment because everything you do is very important, but does it have to be in-house?
I'm confused by that because everything I presented to you is things that were in-house that I put out-house.
I'm not. Yeah,
So-
I'm not saying you inherited a situation. You're new and you doing that, but it's more of a select board question. Why don't we explore? I mean, we may address some things in the short term to make sure Kim has the resources, but why shouldn't we explore as a select board outsourcing? Not the Kim function because you need somebody to manage it, but all the other stuff.
Well, that's a much bigger discussion, obviously.
Yeah, it's not a now discussion, but the point
Right.
is,
Right.
we've looked, I just want to say, Bernie, I mean, we've looked at this many years, many times. Police, fire, school, Board of Health. I've covered all those issues in one facet or another where we've looked at whether we, as a town, should be setting those up independently or outsourcing. And for a variety of reasons, we generally come down on the point of doing it ourselves. But we really, over the long term, need to strategically look at what is mission critical to own and what can be outsourced. And I don't want to single out finance or Kim's function. I just want to
I
say,
have outsourced everything I can outsource and saved as much as I can. The rest has to be insourced.
so is
Because
what you have right now all what you consider has to be insourced?
yes, I mean, I can't, if you hire somebody else to do my, to balance your, receivables and stuff, you're paying an auditor $150 an hour. So everything I can outsource to save money with, lockbox and, I put the link up. It wasn't up there for the deputy collector because we were collecting still delinquent motor vehicle when you're paying a deputy collector to do it. That's
But what about,
so
know,
those have all been totally outsourced and they're there. What's left still is, you can't really outsource. You can outsource to a sense a tax taking. I need an attorney, but it's pulling all those records in to find out which ones need to go down that path. So you'd be hiring an auditor, which would be more. So the outsourcing in a collection office is the collection of bills, the printing of bills, and things like that. Those are smart art outsourcing type of things to do. The rest is utilizing your software and, not having duplication of work. Like the abatements, Melissa now is on the software. She's doing it. Mary Ann was all excited the other day because it's making her life simpler. It comes right down to my office and we're eliminating, a whole process, and we're eliminating refunding money and making our taxpayers pay it to wait to get their money back. It's, so those are the things you have to look at internally. You have to utilize your cash management, blocks so that everything is streamlined. You're not putting it in the left-hand drawer and moving it to the right-hand drawer every day. But that is a bigger conversation. There's things that you can do immediately, which I've tried to do as finance director. And then there's things that going forward, like when Priscilla retiring, thinking about that and thinking about she inherited a general ledger that was from, 15, 18 years ago. Things have changed. That's the time to restructure that, which would take an outside source to rebuild your chart of accounts once somebody gets settled in, and then make that match to all your DOR reports, to your cash management module, to scanning, to having departments start to put their own information in. So it's the streamlining that is a bigger project, and that's going to take manpower, and you can consult someone on that. But for the immediate is, I'm not sure with other departments, but for my department, that's why I said to you, if you take those 3 lines and add and divide them, $3,000 was being spent on something, plus your time being done in-house that were easily taken out of house, and sit your bank money's in the bank faster. Your bills go out whether COVID happens or not. You're not paying for a physical bill that you're storing. We're not storing all those bills anymore. So those are the things that you can outsource. But the other day-to-day kind of stuff, or the bank stuff, somebody taking those deposits and then processing through the system, that's going to be done within the office. The payroll, we
Right.
do have an outsource. That's another one, but the payroll's huge, and we have 111Fs now. We have teachers coming on. We have, one of my
Yeah, but I
girls
mean,
is
Kim, there's services that do that for a living.
right. Well, we have an outside service that does the payroll. I don't know more outside service that you want. You have to have somebody inside entering into the outside source. They do the W-2s.
Do we really? In this day and age of fintech, I don't know. Listen, I don't want to have that battle right now, but
Yeah, can
I believe that we should take a mission on, you should, Kim, over time, to really take a hard look at what can be automated and outsourced. The idea that we have to process these things ourselves, it just strikes me as a 20th century concept. Now,
But I don't know,
that's me.
we're processing minimal now. You're saying that, and I'm saying, other than, I'm telling everybody they can pay online, they can do it. We don't have to process the tax bills in the office now. So I guess I'm kind of, getting to the point where I get what you're saying. So we are, the money goes directly to the bank. It doesn't come to Carlisle, opened up in Carlisle and put through. It's open through machines, and it goes through so much faster. Those are outside processes. And I will look further into outside process. What I'm asking you to support is, I am hitting a wall where there's no more Kim left.
Listen, I want to bifurcate. I agree. I want to bifurcate the short-term need that you've clearly articulated. I'm okay with it. I got an issue with process, as I said, but let me go back to my 2 issues. So
Okay.
I think in the long term, the second issue, my view that, I think we as a select board should take on, and it's not just finance, it's lots of departments where we really have to take a hard look. If we're going to survive as an independent town, we got to be more nimble and creative about automating and outsourcing stuff, because we just do an awful lot of stuff in the old way. That's not particularly a Kim Kane issue, that's a Carlisle issue. The first issue of process, I'm okay, you had an audience and you gave your pitch, but I would push it back to Tim and the finance committee to vet all that stuff and then come back with a much more narrow saying, Anush needs to do these things and she needs these more hours, you know, and all this other stuff. Okay, let somebody else that's vetting all that sort that. Because I think if we start down that slippery slope where we're, you know, acknowledging at the select board level that every single department comes in with all their little things, then it'll chew up all our time, and we're supposed to be an overseeing board. So that is my view, admittedly, as a rookie in the select board, and I'm happy to be correct.
Well, I think you're right, David. I mean, the whole idea of best practices is something that we need to have a look at, and there are probably resources available to do that. The MSA, for instance, is one of the things that's one of the things they do, and they can help us with that. But we have to ask them to do it. You're absolutely right. But and you're right. And that's a discussion that is townwide, not just treasurer collector. And I think we can do the short-term stuff as needed, but over the long term, we really do need to look at that sort of thing across the board, because there are lots of things we're not perhaps very efficient at. And I think probably Kim, your department is one of the ones that has less of a problem with that than a lot of other places in this town.
You hire for more, and I've come in done and try to with my immediate group is streamline processes, and if you can outsource it for more reasonable
Right.
things. And those have been some of my goals. I just went in front of you because Tim knew I was going to the FinCom, and I just didn't want to. I asked what the process was, and I figured it had to go to personnel. So.
Yeah.
I had the same question that David did, and got the same answer, so that's okay.
I have another question. It seems to me we're nibbling around the edges, and I'm just wondering, at one point, our treasurer, collector, finance director was kind of grooming, and the assistant was supposed to be, brought along in a succession plan and be able to step into the shoes of the treasurer, collector, finance director, if that person were to be ill or whatever. So I guess one of my questions is that still happening? The second question is, would it be, do we need really, I like the idea of talking of FTEs and not people, okay? Right. So right. If we had 3 FTEs, would it make sense to have, would it make sense to have a finance director, full stop, treasurer collector, or 2 people in treasurer collector? One's the treasurer, one's the, I don't know how you would, divide that up. I mean, is that a better, should we be looking to change the whole?
If you truly want to finance, yes, I would say that, because as a finance director, then all these other things with assessor, accountant, all this, you can budget, you can take and manage all of that. I wouldn't say you'd have to have a treasurer and a collector. My former town had a treasurer and collector separate, but I was more acting as a finance director. So if you had a true finance director, yes, you could have a treasurer collector in that department. You wouldn't have to have 2, a treasurer and a collector. That's where towns get expensive.
Okay, so let's say we have a finance director, which is you. And I guess my question is the 1.46 or 1.66, it would be then, extra FTE that we have, would that be the equivalent of a treasurer collector? Would those two people that are in those, the 0.86 and the 0.8, would they be able to become the treasurer collector?
I would say no right now. That's why I have training in there. One is very much on payroll. The other FTE is only been a few years. So my goal was, if COVID hadn't hit, and I think I put in my narrative to FinCom, was that what I want to do is, if I can get one of my assistants to start going to some virtual things, because you have to understand Mass General Law to be a treasurer collector. So I would say you need a treasurer collector with those, you really need 3 people, running, that office. If I was only treasurer collector and do it with the 2 and not having finance director, yes, I could probably, you could probably handle that. So, with what it is now, you can't do an MB finance director too. There's just too many, things that are outside of it, with it. But you would not need a treasurer and a collector.
Okay,
Or if you need a treasurer collector, you could do treasurer finance and put one together and separate the collection and give, different FTEs that way too. You know what I mean?
because I think that's another way that we should be
That's
thinking
another
about
way you could do
being
it. You
more
could have
efficient and organizing efficiently.
collector and that, and then you have treasurer, treasurer finance or whichever it is, and you have your payroll person, which is a separate person, then you'd need somebody within that body to take, on the treasury stuff. So there are different ways, all towns do it differently, but, and it could work, there just needs to be more FTEs to, have an assistant treasurer and an assistant collector and, some, people into it. There's just, and it's not just, I would say the treasurer collector, I also look at, because I was an accountant in doing it too. And, with the accounting part of it, there's not a lot of, even for Priscilla to delegate work to and have, help to keep it, ahead, so to speak, if you understand what I'm saying, Katie.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's different structures to
Yeah.
look. Yes,
so I guess the question is,
Yeah.
at a certain point, do we want to be looking at different structures?
right. Where you have a true finance director and you have,
Yeah.
treasurer.
Well, I'm personally glad that we just decided to have her come tonight, because this is always very educational as well. We had really nothing to do with her request per se, but it has a lot to do with our understanding of what you do for a living. And that's important for us.
Well, it does, because we find out more what those, extra FTEs are being spent,
Right.
where they're, being allocated.
Yeah.
Where the resources are being deployed.
Okay.
Okay.
Any further questions for Kim? Hearing none. Thank you, Kim. Appreciate it. Yep.
Appreciate it.
I'm sure this will come back.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks. Take the night off.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, we're still early.
We're still early. All right.
Doing well, even with all that.
All right. I think I'd like to move the town administrator's report up, because the other discussion is kind of open-ended, and we'll see how long that goes, but we
That's
can get the action items out of the way.
Okay. The town administrator's report. The first item is that a number of boards have been asking about possible training from town council with respect to the open meeting law, particularly in light of a lot of the remote meetings that have been going on for the past year or so. Also, there's some interest in the open meeting law implications, rather, of using a shared drive to, for committees to edit a document, whether or not that presents some problems. And I think it does, as council has told me. Long and the short of it is that town council is happy to provide that training. The timing would be, for the board to decide. They can do that as part of a meeting, or we could do that as a one-off on a separate night. So if you're amenable to that, I can arrange that with Tom Harrington.
I'd vote for a one-off myself.
I agree. I don't think it's something that can be done as part of a select board meeting. It needs its own forum.
I mean, as long as Tom is willing to do it, shouldn't we? I agree it should be separate session, but shouldn't we invite all the boards? I mean,
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, they're the ones that are asking for it.
Yeah. Barney, do you have a question?
Well, no, I was
Oh.
just gonna agree.
All
It's
right.
really geared to the boards and committees. It's not geared to us as a select board, although we may benefit from it too.
Is this something that's a 1 hour or 3 hour? Do you know, have any idea, Tim, what would be
I think typically it's an hour, hour and a half. I think
Oh, is
anything
that all?
longer, kind of people.
Okay,
So
Tune out a bit.
I should say, school committees across the Commonwealth wrestle with this more maybe specifically than any other boards because of the activist parent nature of the things. And the MASC, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, has a canned training, which is very good, actually. So, I mean, that's another option. And it's not, I mean, I haven't looked at it in a while. It may be a little bit school committee oriented, but I mean, that's another resource that could be considered as they've already done it all. They don't really, it doesn't require much. I mean, if Tom's willing to give a tutorial, that's fine. But if we're going to spend, if he needs to spend a number of hours prepping for that, and I don't think he does,
He doesn't.
we should just bear that in mind that there's a lot of people have already prepared very good presentations on this subject.
I think the idea is to have a forum that people can ask individualized questions.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of them have been cropping up through the master planning process because of
Right.
subcommittees to the subcommittees to the subcommittees.
Yeah.
And, people couldn't believe that the subcommittee was going to also have to be open, and so
Okay.
I think it's just more to, reassure people and to also re-emphasize that everything basically is open meeting law and,
Mhm. Okay.
Yep.
I'm good with it.
Yeah.
I think tailoring it to our town is appropriate, and I think Tom could do a great job at that.
Okay, good.
I would have a suggestion, Tim, and I don't know exactly how you do this, but if there's a way to have Tom give a very short, kind of overview, and then, as Kate's saying, leave time for questions and answers, but also to try to solicit some of the specific questions ahead of time. I just, I think we want to make it as
Yeah.
meaningful as possible for the people that do have questions. And so rather than, I don't know, I'm guessing he has, probably some prepared remarks that he's given to others before, but if we could, zero in on what is particularly on people's minds, in these boards and committees, on these boards and committees, that would make it, I think, a more productive time.
Yeah, and
Sure.
I'm going to say also, I imagine that a lot of the questions will revolve around Zooming. And, we learned late in the game that, for instance, we're supposed to, change our names on the, really more clearly identify ourselves, that we're supposed to do a roll call, that we're supposed, things like that as part of the open meeting law. And that, those rules about having to be able to be seen and heard and all this other stuff. So that would be something updated, open meeting law rules
You mean updated for the Zoom life?
for the Zoom life, right?
I agree with you.
Yeah, which is liable to go on forever.
Yes.
We can
Oh,
make
yeah,
that
now
part
that you
of
can
the,
wear your PJ bottoms and still be in this.
That's a broad question. It would be
Who tattled?
It'd be interesting to get Tom's take on it, whether he's heard anything about, is the state likely to, in the long run, make it possible, make it legal, whatever, to have Zoom meetings continue as deliberative bodies? Because I think for a lot of people, they've proved to be, a really good means for getting together and a lot more efficient and enjoyable, frankly, than having to get in your car and try to go into somebody's office or whatever. So that's
Yeah.
just a general question.
There is, the MMA last week did talk about that there's discussions at the state level about,
Mhm.
hybridizing things. And I believe there's also some discussion at the state level for the town meetings as well. But nothing's come out yet.
Yeah, I mean, you could more broadly ask that question of, corporate life, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Well, it's and the a lot of the corporations have already made that decision. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I think it's the timing. I mean, I agree with what I've heard. I can't see it going back to the old way. Now, maybe
No.
retract a little bit, but this is the way it will go.
Right. All right, so I guess, Tim, you'll
Okay.
ask Tom to, what's good for him, and we'll schedule it. It'll be
We'll
good.
schedule something with Tom, and to Barney's suggestion, when we invite the boards and committees, we'll ask them to submit questions or topics in advance so that Tom can have some time to work on that and have some answers for them.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Good.
The second item is with respect to the Carlisle Veterans Committee. There's been some interest in kind of reconstituting that committee. It was quite active a few years ago, kind of not so active in recent years. Chris Eisenbees is offering to continue as a member of the Veterans Committee and also take responsibility for maintaining the Veterans Honor Roll list that is read at Memorial and Veterans Day observances. And as you know, we periodically refurbish the plaques on the monuments at on the common. It's not possible to do it every time we have a name or two added. We have to wait till we have a handful of names to do it every 5 or so years. So I think it's a good opportunity to put the word out through the Mosquito or and other venues to that the town is looking for veterans or perhaps non-veterans with an interest in veterans affairs to be part of the Carlisle Veterans Committee. I think we've got 2 members currently, but always looking for more.
I agree. I think.
Good idea. Yep.
Okay.
I'm supportive.
I will do that. Third item, there's an email from Phil Drew of the Historical Society. They've been gifted 3 display cases from the Concord Historical Society, and they have a use for 2 of them. He's asking if the town, or the select board would have a possible spot for it at town hall. I said I would ask the board, bring it to you. Space is of course the issue. It's a generous offer, but we'd have to decide what where we could put it in town hall, and they'd be responsible for kind of a rotating display of historical items and artifacts. They'll handle that. We just need to have a location for this display case in the future. So
Could it
I
be,
have-
could it be at the school?
I was just going to ask the same question. That was my big question. I think it's a great thing for the school if they would take it, because
Right.
Is it empty display cases or are there things in it we have to show?
I think
They're-
they're empty at the moment. Yeah.
yeah,
No,
currently, but they
saying-
would.
The Historical Society would keep it maintained and provide items.
they would do a rotating display in it.
Yeah,
Okay,
either
I
the
can,
school or the library. Yeah.
You know, we have.
If we didn't
display-
have, I mean, I think town hall's good if we got room for it, but if it's going to be an issue, I think there are other options.
Yeah, I'd say, Tim, if you know what the
Gotcha.
dimensions are,
It's
see how big
It's
this.
2 by 6.
2 by 6.
Oh,
I was trying to think, is that little, there's the doorway, the double door, and there are those 2 little tongues that come out. Are those 6 feet wide? Because you could put one at the end,
so.
but then that might be against a window and that might not be good for the display. So otherwise, that's the only place I can think of in the town hall.
Yeah, I can give Jim O'Shea a call and see if there's potentially some space at the school.
Yeah, library at
Okay.
the school or at
Yeah,
You know. one of the halls.
yeah, no, we'll run that. I mean, be ashamed to would not use it.
Right.
We'll find a space for it. But you support the idea of
Yes.
it being somewhere, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
all right.
It shouldn't go to the swap shed.
Right. Too much glass. Yeah. All right.
I have another little item that I am asking for your forbearance to allow me to bring up during the
That's right.
administrator's report, if that's okay. It's regarding the cheer project. I think I mentioned a while back that we are organizing a sort of a week-long event that we're calling Nature Art with Scrappy. Scrappy being a compostable mascot kind of figure that Allison Saylor has put together, and it's really just fabulous. She's made a big cardboard cutout of this little guy, and the idea is to encourage people to create some kind of art out of natural materials, whether it's things they find in nature or compostable materials, and create some kind of a piece of art. And we put them, the school vacation week, which begins with Valentine's Day and runs through the 21st, would be the designated time period for anybody in town that wanted to create something, to put it out on display. And our current preference would be to have it go on the Conant Land Trail, particularly sort of aiming to have the first little meadow area where the Vivian Chaput monument is, that starting there and then running down past the pond would be kind of the designated area. And so I wanted to get, and let me just add that at the end of the period, the cheer team and probably some helpers will go out and collect everything that hasn't, decomposed or that can't be tossed back in the woods, like pine cones and leaves, etc. So we'll clean anything up that needs to be cleaned up afterwards. And I did check in with the Trails Committee, and they think that's a great idea. And so I wanted to get the support of the board for the use of the Conant land for this purpose.
Here, here.
Yeah. Anybody not for it? Put it that way. Okay, I think the sense of the board is yes, go right ahead.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, and I've noticed, I've been walking the trails a fair amount lately, and I did notice little painted rocks
Yes.
all over the place, which is kind of nice, with little messages on them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can thank my kids for those.
Oh, really? Ah, very good.
And lots of others. Lots of
Yeah.
others.
I think there's lots of people been doing it.
Yeah,
My
that's-
kids did a fair amount of them when they got bored in the summertime.
Yeah.
I don't know who came up with that. Amy, do you know who came up with the painted rock project? Okay.
Yeah, they're
Everybody's
fun.
painting rocks. That's
Yeah.
what I hear.
I keep discovering new ones.
Well, I have to say, I don't know, you guys probably covered this years ago, but what's her name at Carlisle School, the art teacher, what's her name?
Oh, Rachel Levy.
Well, Rachel did a great job. Those signs, those trail signs are just extraordinary with those.
Yeah.
The kids are just awesome. I love it.
Okay.
Okay,
And of course, the meeting schedule is,
meeting schedule, and I've got to work with Alan on filling out the agendas for those meetings, but those are the next three on the schedule. Then we're gonna have the Finance Committee back at some point to talk about their preliminary budget discussions with departments, and don't know if that'll be February 23rd, but it'll be one of those three meetings, I think.
very good.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the other things that, as we're looking at meetings, we talked about it elsewhere, the whole idea of when to hold the election and town meeting. And
Yes.
it's something, and maybe we can talk about that as part of our planning issue, but it's something that we probably ought to be making a decision on reasonably soon, so that we can get that on the calendar.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
With the election and
Concord has theirs already set, I think. Somebody said today.
Yeah.
All right,
June
June 13th, I think.
June
It's
13th.
Sunday.
Yep. Right.
do I recall somebody saying, or did I make this up, that Wayne has already been consulted and he's fine with doing it in June?
He is. He
Okay.
is. I'll circulate it. He sent me back an email a while ago, and he thinks that's a great idea, and he's got
Okay.
some good reasons why we'd want to do it in June. I'll send that to the board.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we put that on the February 9th agenda to make, unless there's some other information we need before then to make a decision.
Well, the other information we need, and I have some of it, is that the last day of school is going to be the 18th of June. The 19th is Juneteenth, and I don't think that would be a good day to use. The 12th and the 20th, and there was Father's Day is the 20th, and last year I know we tried to avoid that. The 12th, the weekend of the 12th, the Carlisle garden tour is taking place. So I don't know if we want to overlap with that or not. So that pushes it back one more week to the 5th if we're doing it a weekend, unless we do it on a Sunday as Concord did.
Well, let's look at the options.
Okay.
Yeah. But we can put it, I'll put the discussion on the February 9th agenda.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but those are just things that we want to keep in mind.
Can I, this is kind of an odd question to ask because I can't be very specific, obviously, but there are two different topics that I would like us to discuss, and I really think they need to be done in an executive session. So how does the decision get made to do something in executive session when, you know, I don't really want to say here, and maybe that's something Alan, I just talked to you offline and you make the decision with Tim about.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing, executive sessions have to be for specific purposes.
Yeah.
You have to state, you don't have, I mean, I think first of all, that's why you have to go to Tom Harrington's
Right.
tutorial, but I mean, you probably, yes, you should go to the chair, you know, and
Yeah, okay.
determine what you want to cover anyway. But
No,
when
they are
we decide to have executive,
Yeah,
you've got
they're
to
two
state what the
specific
purpose-
topics, and Alan, I'll talk to you about it. And
Okay, very good. Yeah.
thank you.
I may have to get advice too, but we'll go from there. Yeah. All righty. Okay. Anything else, Tim?
No, Alan.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right.
Oh,
Let's,
Tim, sorry to interrupt, but Tim, do you want to say anything about the follow-up session with the department heads? Have you got that scheduled with
With Mark,
Mark? Yeah,
I don't have the date nailed down.
okay.
Going to talk to him tomorrow morning. Well, we all are, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
It'll be next month, but I don't have the specific date or
All right.
dates.
Great.
all right. Long-term it's not just budget priorities, but just long-term priorities discussion, one of which is budget. But it includes all kinds of other things. And again, I really set this list out to get your input on scheduling these. That I think we ought to devote time in our meetings to looking at these kind of things, because I think they're important, just as best practices we talked about earlier is something that we really ought to be addressing. It's just a matter of finding the time to do it and scheduling a time to do it. And so I really wanted to put these out there. I'm not sure the list was just something that I came in the top of my head. I didn't really have anything particular in mind, other than these are things which I think require in-depth discussion and a fair amount of lead time in order to do something about it. Certainly things like zoning, town growth, those kinds of things, and to get it out there so that people can start thinking about it as well. It comes up at town meeting, and we really ought to have a town-wide discussion about these important issues. And I did see, I mean, I had taxes and debt as one of my issues, and I see the finance committee wants to talk about that when they meet with us next time also. So I think that's a pretty good one as to what should we have a debt policy. But and obviously Kate's favorite topic, physical facilities. And actually that came up today as well, in terms of the public safety building, just to, which is you know, sitting out there without any real plan or without even a real proposal, other than the two chiefs saying we think we ought to look at this as a real option, but we haven't taken any option on it. We haven't really had a proposal put before us. And I'm not sure that these are all things that have to be done by the select board. I think, but they're things that we at least ought to be directing other people to do where it's appropriate. So I'll open it up for now and get your input, whether this is a good idea, bad idea, and if it's a good idea, how we might go about doing it.
Which idea are we talking about? The police?
But about having time devoted to looking at the long-term priorities of the town.
Well, that,
Yeah, the broader. question.
duh, yeah.
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 Well, that was my feeling.
Okay. Yes,
Yeah,
I think we should, go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say, I think that it's really worthwhile to try to tackle some of these topics, and that one of the things that I think we would really benefit from as a board is having more of a shared set of priorities. And now we, went through our own process to determine some very specific, objectives that sort of between now and the end of this fiscal year. But this is, I think you're raising, Alan, some really good topics for looking at, longer term questions about the town. And so I would definitely support making time, setting aside time, and maybe we just regularly at every meeting where we can at least set aside a portion of the time to engage in those, higher level discussions. I think it would be worthwhile to, if we were going to do them as a board, to maybe have one of us be the kind of point person for framing the conversation. I mean, I think if we just said, yeah, we're going to discuss public facilities, and then we all show up at the next select board meeting and we just kind of start throwing out, what we think, or, we could end up, anyway, I'm not sure it would be as productive as sort of a more, yes, you want to have the broad discussion, but maybe having some, leading questions or.
And data collection. In many cases, I mean, as we did this evening, where we looked around at comparables, we have towns all around us that are not very dissimilar from us, who may do things very different from us. I can think, I know of one offhand, Boxborough, that's very much a town like us, but they're organized very differently than we are. Even in things like the land use boards and that sort of thing, and the Board of Health, I mean, they have a completely different system than we do, and they take advantage of regionalization to solve some of their problems, and in many cases it's been worked very, very well for them. So I think those kind of things, to go out there and see, okay, how, if we're going to look at zoning, if we're going to look at growth, housing, what are the other towns doing? And I know on the Affordable Housing Trust, we did look at some of that. We looked at the Andover system, for instance, for meeting their affordable housing needs, and they have a very unique system for doing so, which is very good. Whether it's applicable to us is something we need to address, but there are examples out there that if we gather our data before we discuss it, and come in with, okay, well, here's how these people do it, and I think this is a really, really good idea, then we can take pot shots at it. But it's the kind of thing that I think you're right, Barney. I mean, I think we shouldn't just go at this with, okay, well, tonight we'll discuss housing. I like big houses, you like little houses. I like greenhouses, you like blue houses. We need to have some idea of what the options are And we often get those ideas from looking what other people have done.
Yep.
And,
Okay.
which means we're probably not ready tonight to discuss any of these in any kind of depth, but
Well, but
Uh,
I think tonight what we could do is look at the kind of broad headings.
Yep.
And say, maybe prioritize, say, what do we want to tackle first?
Yep.
And I'm tempted to do them all at the same
I
time.
mean,
but-
before we, before we prioritize what's on the list, I think, I think we should frame out some broad comments. So, I mean, the first thing is, where's the master plan in all this? Because a lot of this data gathering, prioritization, figure out what the town wants. I thought that was what the master plan was supposed to do.
yeah, but it didn't. And
Okay, so are we
all
officially
all they
saying
did is
that-
look at what we're doing. They didn't look at what anybody else is doing.
Well,
Although that is, that is, we do have a little bit of that, Alan, and that is what's part of the next, I would say, 4 or 5 months now, that the additional research and analysis, including best practices from other communities,
Okay.
is on the agenda. And it may not be going into as much depth as we might want. If we're getting down to the level of, how is the town hall set up in terms of how they do their different functions, that's not going to come from the master
no,
plan.
but Barney, I mean, yes, of course, but you always should start from the bigger view down, right? So I guess that's really the fish or cut bait question is, are we going to wait around for master plan to sort of give us the general sense of what the town feels are its, when we talk about the big picture things, like, do we want to be more rural, or do we want to have more development? Do we want lower taxes, or are we comfortable with higher taxes? Da, 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 da. If we're in these big picture items, are we going to wait for input from master plan, or are we giving up and we're going to do it our own? I mean, we should just decide that. Because,
We're not giving it up. I mean, if we.
well, we as in Barney Arnold's not giving it up, but is the
No,
select board.
No, it's the select board. I want to say, the town authorized $160,000 2 years ago, and we've spent, whatever that is, so like 65,000 of it. And we don't want to just dribble that money away. And there's been a lot of good, solid work done. Now, I know you have not experienced it yet. And so maybe.
I'm not adversarial to it. It's a question of when. When
Well,
will there be?
Tell you
another-
the when is to have a final report done by this, keep forgetting it's 21, by this fall.
So
Including,
is that, I mean, I guess I turn back to Alan and Kate. I don't care, but I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I don't want to duplicate efforts, but I also don't want to wait around for something that might or might not happen. So I got to ask the other
Right.
members of the select board, are we comfortable sort of, because to really do it right, you want to get that input, as you said, Alan, with data, and then progress from there. Are we comfortable with that timetable?
I don't think it has to be an either or. Because, for instance, the question of a public facility, a joint public facility, I think we know that we need to address that as a town, as the select board, to figure out.
Barney, I disagree. I mean, I agree that there's a need for it, but there's also a need for a council on aging, maybe senior center, community center. I can't possibly prioritize those things without input. If I thought, I mean, a year ago, or maybe a year and a half ago, whatever it was, I was optimistic that the master planning process, because of these kitchen table conversations and all these things, which I thought were great, was going to get us an answer, at least, at the general level of what the taxpayers of the town think is important. And we serve those taxpayers. I can't possibly make a decision. I believe that, we have one major capital building project ahead of us in the short term. And I can't possibly tell you whether it's a public safety building or a community center at this moment. And I'm disappointed, frankly, that I don't yet know that from the master planning. It's not even on the master planning's radar. That to me is a basic thing.
I'll let somebody else speak at this point. I mean, we can talk more about it, David, offline if you want, but anyway, what,
All I mean to say, I'm coming across as too critical, but what I'm saying is, if we embrace as a select board that we have certain mission to prioritize these budget priorities, and I think we do, we've got to identify whether we're going to wait for input from this other parallel process, or are we going to forge ahead? I don't think we can say, well, master planning's doing A, B, and C, and we'll do D, E, F. I just don't believe that. I think you have to start with the whole prioritization, and then you figure out what your priorities are and you drill down. And I'm fine doing it alone, and I'm fine waiting for master plan. I really don't care. But I don't think you can say this runs in parallel and we do our own thing. I think that's ineffective.
Well, I think there are some things, I mean, it would be nice to know, and I'm not familiar enough with what the master planning group has been doing in the last several months, but if there are areas that they're just not even going to touch, we could address those. I don't think there's any benefit in running in parallel with looking at exactly the same issues. I think we
But
can
but
look
you
at,
pointed, but Alan, you
Yeah.
and your own little list, and it's not a comprehensive list. It doesn't have schools, it doesn't have security on it, but that list, the pieces, and I don't mean the physical plant, because that's relatively straightforward, but the big picture items on that list, taxes, zoning, housing, growth.
Yep.
Those are huge strategic issues. And I got to ask again, what piece of that is master planning taking on? I thought that's what they are taking.
Yeah, well, or I just asked the question from the other way around. Which of those aren't they taking on?
Well, let's ask it
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
Okay, I would say they are not taking taxes for sure. Because I think, well, I'll let Barney go ahead and,
well, I think they'll take on taxes from the standpoint of saying, here, if we use this as a rough estimate of what it would cost to build a community center, this would be the impact on taxes, roughly, in very broad, rough terms. But I'm not sure what that
Yeah, I
means.
mean, we don't, I keep sounding critical, but we don't need the master planning committee to tell us what a capital expenditure of X will result in Y taxes. Kimberly can do that in her sleep.
No, but David, the reason we're doing this is because it's who are we trying to represent? We're not just representing our own opinions, right? We're trying to figure out, what do people in town think?
That's exactly right. And that's why the master planning process
Let me
is
finish.
valuable.
David, hang on, just let me finish. Yeah. So when I mention that as an example, it is because people in town, the average person, needs to have some of that data to give an opinion about whether or not they would support it. And so one of the things that is being planned by the master plan is to take some of the possible scenarios for the directions the town could go, and be able to provide enough information about what that involves, that when you send out a survey or when you hold another set of kitchen conversations, the people in those, or the people answering the survey, can give a real opinion about whether or not they support it.
Yeah, no, okay, I agree with that. But so again, I get back to, I don't see, Alan, I don't see anything on your list that the master planning committee shouldn't, let me say it differently. The master planning committee, or the master planning mission, to me should be to give a general sense of the priorities of those items on that list, to help guide us in framing the priorities of the things we do. We can certainly, and we are, take on things like streamline land use boards, make it more efficient. We can do the make-buy decisions we were talking to Kimberly about earlier, examine departments, see what's outsourcing will give us, blah, blah, blah. We can do that anyway, and that's fine. We should do it, but it's not big picture.
Right.
If we're really big picture, we've got to dovetail. We either have to dovetail with the master planning process, or we have to decide that for whatever reason, the master planning process is either too slow or not right or whatever, and forge our own way. I don't see a middle ground in that.
Okay, I don't either, but that isn't really what I had in mind in the first place. it's not a question of whether we build a public safety building or a new town hall or a new school or a new community center. The question is, we know we're going to have these needs in the future. We know we're going to have major capital expenses coming up, whether it's this year, next year, the year after that. Something's going to burn down, or something's going to fall down, or something's going to happen. My question is, how do we plan so that we can do these things? That's my approach
Right,
to this.
okay, no, I like that. So let's explore that. So when I was, finance chief way back in the old days, I would always say to people, and Kate's heard me say this, great schools, rural character, low taxes. Pick 2 of 3 and tell me which 2 you want, because you can't have all 3. And you could expand that to say, public services or whatever. The point is that we do need, even to have what you're talking about, we can certainly, from a process standpoint, again, and I think it is a good idea, come up with guidelines of how much debt we think we can incur, what is the appetite for taxes. We can identify the 4 corners of the playing field to help frame future decisions. But until we really understand what the sentiment of the general public is for those things, it's very hard. It's very hard to prioritize. I'll give you just a near-term example. I mean, schools is going to come in with a 7.5% ask on its budget. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that, and they're probably justifiable. But again, you're talking, and I'm a school defendant, but you're talking about a population of 600 students, which means, broadly speaking, at the most 1,200 parents, probably 1,000 parents out of 5,000 taxpayers, and it's soaking up, half the town's budget. I mean, that's a legitimate question of what's the priority of that compared with the growing segment of seniors who really have a very light, constituent advocacy. I'm not putting a value judgment on that discussion, but that is a very important strategic discussion that you can't really have until you have the input of the population. And hence,
but you can say, how have other towns handled that who don't have our taxes,
yep,
have good schools, have the same population,
right,
and there are answers out there.
Right, and we should do that we should do every day of the week. Every day of the week, school board, and they should be looking at comparables and trying to come up with innovative strategies, and FinCom should push them to do that. But the general sense of where that budget, the John Ballantyne sense of where the budget is going versus the, demographic versus the tax base, blah, 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 long term is not about what the comparables do. It's about how we prioritize our life here in Carlisle, acknowledging that there are certain costs to that. So, schools can cut a few $100,000 by being creative, but they're not going to cut a few $1 million.
Yeah, I understand, but as town leaders, I think we have an obligation to say, okay, yes, you can't have a town full of cows and a marble school and 9 fire trucks.
Right.
So how do we balance those needs with solutions? And as town leaders, we may have to say, okay, we cannot stay rural in the absolute sense of the word. That is, have only one store, and keep taxes so people can afford to live here. Okay. And right, if you want these other things, which by the way, we're going to have at some point.
But again, I think I also want to, going back to schools just briefly, our school is rated what, number 1 in the state. It's a good school. Could the school still be a good school if it's rated number 8 in the state?
Sure, and if you ask 7 other towns, we are number 8.
Yeah.
Well,
Right, but Kate, back to my point. Whether we're 1 or 8 or 12, in the top 25, the cost of it is about the same.
Right.
It's not, you're not going to suddenly save some money because you decided to be number 8. The cost of running a high-performing, top-notch school in the 21st century is just, there's a certain tag to that. So I agree with everything I've heard, but I say we as a select board, I think we should first decide whether we want to wait or accelerate the master plan process. And I agree, it's spent money, it's been thoughtful and all these things. There's been some bumps in the road. Okay, fine. Everybody has that. You know, we can wait. I mean, this is not like a burning problem. It's a problem that we need to address. We can wait till September or whenever. We can push this master plan to accelerate it and get us some data in the summer, you know, but I think to ignore it and just forge ahead, it just seems wrong to me. It seems strategically wrong to me.
Okay.
Well, and unfortunately though, there are pressures. I mean, there's a pressure to build this public safety building. I'm not sure how to deal with it, because that is tied up with the master plan. But
So can the master plan finish up by the summer, at least get some point? Again, I always say to everybody, works for me. Don't let perfect be the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
Can we get some, headway onto this thing by June 30? It's not going to be at this town meeting issue anyway, right? So we're not going to authorize a building despite what Chief Fisher might want, for this town meeting. So we've got some near-term issues that are COVID related and other budget and blah, blah, blah. So we can get all that stuff done, in time for town meeting. And we have the summer, and I've always been a believer, as you guys know, of taking a breath in the summer and maybe really tackling some of these more difficult issues without the calendar pressure. Is there a way we could get, master plan to come up with a set of preliminary recommendations by June 30? Give us a chance to chew on that and start overlaying that into this other stuff. I don't expect an answer tonight, but if you could carry that back to master plan, Barney, I would be very happy.
well, I'm there too. I'm on the.
Well, you too. Oh, okay. All right.
I'm doing the housing, and I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by it, to tell you the truth.
Well, and housing, by the way, thank you for bringing that up. I mean, we're toiling in the fields of housing, and fortunately, Dr. Lewis doesn't have to do it, which is great reason to be a chair of select board, in my opinion. But we're there on these meetings, and I got some bad press because I said, we're an elitist town, and I was taken out of context. But what I meant was that, it's what's quixotian? Is that what they say?
Quixotic?
Quixotic. Thank you. It's a quixotic quest for a town like ours to try to reach, a 10% goal, in my opinion. And therefore, if you're not going to reach a 10% goal, you should think strategically about what are your objectives to affordable housing. And I think we got to a good place, but we are fooling ourselves if we don't, consider whether we want to be a high growth or a low growth town, affordable or not affordable. So they're all inextricably linked. I can't see making headway till we really understand what do people want.
Yeah, we will have a good sense of that by the end of June.
Yeah, I can tell you one thing they want is they want lower taxes.
If that's the most
across the board.
important, if that clearly becomes the most important, then that triggers a whole bunch of decisions. That means you don't really pursue a public safety, you really have to look hard at whether you patch up the old, right? What's the New England expression is, use it up, wear it out, fix it up, or do without, right? I mean, if we live by that credo, there's a whole bunch of decisions that are made. And that's just one example.
I don't think we know that, Kate.
Okay.
I think that there is certainly, well, I think at this point, a lot of this is anecdotal, right? It's not really, hasn't been data, it's not supported yet by data.
Well,
And we'll get that from survey and.
actually, the 2009 one
Yes.
was excellent because it was totally data driven. And I don't think things have really changed much on the ground. And
We
it's
can share
like
that
the
with
seventh you know, the seven blind men and the elephant?
Yeah.
So if you talk to the elder people, they want the taxes to go down because now they're on fixed income and the taxes are going up and their income isn't. And so they're starting to feel, you know, insecure in their own, even though they could take that money, you know, sell that house and take that money to the bank. They don't feel that that's what they want to do. You know, who said that you know, that doesn't really help them. And then there's the younger people who are making a lot more because that they had to make more to buy the house, or they're house poor. We don't know. But anyway, they're two income and they're, you know, they're different from the people who moved in the 50s and 60s. You know, they're just, it's two different, depends upon where you put your dipstick in, how deep that oil is going to be.
Yeah, but you know, even that picture, you said it's not different than 2009, and I would counter it is different than 2009, and it's changing rapidly, and COVID is helping it change because, you know, we're suddenly a hot real estate market, and I don't think it's elders buying houses in Carlisle that's driving that market, right? It's the other way. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think we're smart enough, and all of us collectively represent enough years in Carlisle and enough knowledge to have a reasonable and very, you know, thoughtful and stepwise sort of debate on the topic. And it would be great to have the advantage of the data and the thoughtfulness that the master planning process has undertaken in the last 2 years. So if you guys can come back and tell us, yes, there will be a deliverable on or about the end of June, I am personally happy to wait till then and make it a real priority for us to tackle this. I think it's absolutely a critical priority, and I'm glad it's on the agenda.
Well, no more once we're supposed to get a
But, you know,
consultant.
let's do it the right way. Let's just do it the right way.
Yep.
And,
Okay. Otherwise, though, under some of those, well, when Alan first sent that list around, I embroidered on it. And so, for instance, on physical facilities, I thought, well, we could talk about the townwide facilities department and a maintenance policy of, you know, allocating a certain percentage of the facility value every year towards its maintenance. We could, for taxes, I thought we could talk about elderly deferral, real estate transfer tax, zoning. Well, I have, you know, what's happening with the master plan process, how involved should we be, and how long can or should we wait, and infrastructure. So, you know, a lot of the zoning will depend upon if we wanted to spring for a sewage treatment or a town water supply. But I guess some of those things will be coming out of the master planning.
Yeah, but see, you're talking tactics. I meant strategy.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Okay, all right.
And so from the tactical stand, I agree with Alan, there's things as I said, there's things we're doing now that we should always do the following things. We should try to be as efficient as we can with our resources. We should be as innovative as we can. We should definitely look to comparables for examples of how to do it.
Yes.
And we should always make buy decisions about things that are not core strategic to us. We should always look at that. And so I didn't think we are, you know, we're doing this goal setting. We're doing this, you know, land use consolidation. We're looking at technology. We're addressing, you know, all those tactical things I think we can and should do. And we should have good, you know, human resource practices, all those things. But eventually we come up against these really big picture items. And you mentioned one, Kate, which is, you know, if you go to more density, you're going to need water, like
Yeah.
real, and like, that's like a big, you know, it's like Los Angeles and, you know, Chinatown times, right? I mean, water is the key
Hey,
thing, right? So,
I grew up in Los Angeles and Chinatown times.
okay, so we don't mess with water. We just don't mess with water.
But
Unless we
if
really
you
know
went
what
to, for instance, if you went to 1 acre zoning, cut the land cost in half.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
You could do that.
Well, actually, even better than that, and this is something that Adelaide Grady keeps on bringing up. Instead of thinking of house per acre, we should think of bedrooms per acre, because she was saying, I have, you know, this herself, her husband, and one kid in a 4-bedroom house with a 6-bedroom septic. Well, basically, we should be talking about bedrooms rather than houses. That if they have a 6-bedroom septic on that lot, they should be able to have 3 2-bedroom houses on there. And that would
But if they
densify
want,
it.
but Kate, if they want the if the one child couple has a 6-bedroom house, but are they,
No,
do
they
they have
have
a
a,
bigger water footprint than the two kids in a little house? They don't.
they have a
right?
4-bedroom house with a 6-bedroom septic. It
Right,
was-
but if they only use 3 of those bedrooms and some little house with a 4-bedroom and a 4-bedroom septic uses 4 bedrooms or bathrooms or whatever, aren't they using more water? I don't.
No, the point is that if the land can tolerate and, support a 6-bedroom septic system, it should be able to support the individuals in those bedrooms, or, enough houses, instead of one house with the 6-bedroom septic, why can't you have 3 houses with 1 6-bedroom septic? Maybe I'm not.
Here, there's enough water there for
There's enough water and there's enough
3
room for the septic,
houses if they were all 2 bedrooms.
but you only have one house. So, and
Right,
that's one way of densifying without spreading that
right,
out.
right.
Because that's what eats up, frankly, 1 house per 2 acres is not rural. Rural areas, if you go all through Europe, the way they keep their rural areas is by, squishing all the houses together and leaving all the spaces open, not, by spreading it out every 2 acres.
And it solves your tax problem.
And it solves your tax problem, because now those 2 acres are giving you 3 households to pay taxes.
Mm,
And they're paying 1/3.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's lowering the individual's tax. And frankly, because we have such low capacity in our schools right now, depends upon how they fall, obviously, but we have some capacity without expanding the expense of the school to put more kids in that school.
Yeah.
That I agree with. I agree with that. I don't know where it would really be a good study. Ask poor Jeff Bram. Well, I don't say poor Jeff Bram because I disagree with what he did. But ask him about, how many houses can you put on a water table, right?
Right.
It's not an obvious answer to me that suddenly you can go to 1 acre. I don't know that.
Well,
A lot of towns do.
yeah, I'd rather not do that.
Yeah.
That would really densify everything. I'd rather put, leave what's open.
I'm not suggesting you put a house on every acre of Carlisle.
I know, I understand. In fact, you couldn't even do that with my lot, because I have an acre of wet. So
Yep.
you
We
can't
have a
even do it.
NIMBY. We have a NIMBY in our group.
Yeah. And your cable lies on the ground.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Still no.
You're gonna find a lot of blue salamanders and a lot of ancient Indian heads in this.
All right. Well, I guess we've deferred this issue for a bit anyway until the summer. So.
Well, the action, I like the discussion, and I just reiterate.
Yep.
Since Kate and Barney are representing the master plan, if the urgency could be conveyed to master planning committee to get us we want to embrace it. I mean, my view is, I don't want to speak for the board. For me personally, I would like to embrace the master planning process. I would like a useful conclusions to come from that. I just request that it be in a timely as possible fashion, because the calendar, the nature of the beast is we get caught up in tactical issues, in the run up to town meeting, and we have more mental room to deliberate, when that's over. Let's just put it that way.
All righty.
Let me just, 2 follow-up things. One is, would it be of interest to the other 3 members of the board, Luke's not here, but to have Jack Trost and Jan Corneal come to a select board meeting? They're the 2, Jack's the current chair, the new chair of the Master Plan Steering Committee.
Or maybe Stacy.
Yeah, or maybe Jack and Stacy. Yeah. Would you
Yeah, I think an update would be wonderful, very
Yeah.
informative.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Um,
Love
And
that.
we will make room on whatever agenda they can come to.
Okay, I will take responsibility for reaching out to Jack and Stacy, and then Tim, I'll work out with you, what date makes sense.
Yeah. Marnie, you were not, it was Mary Lynn that was at last night at the planning board. So I think that, I thought that presentation went rather well. The
Oh, good.
master plan committee, or some elements of it, went to the planning board, and they had some, because I think they're also, kind of antsy about, getting this going and underway and everything else. And so we gave them a presentation about what sort of ideas we're thinking about. And I think it was well received.
We got the thumbs up from Mary Lynn. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mary Lynn was one of the ones that was in the hot seat last night. So, yeah.
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 When I did 3, they've got 3 new accessory apartments approved, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
My other point was, it's not really exactly the same, but it does feel to me, I wonder if we should, as a board, and I'm not sure what order, when we do this, is it after the FinCom presents, their preliminary, budget guidelines, but somewhere in there, I think we need to have a discussion about our priorities that we want to have reflected in the proposed FY22 budget. Right. And I think it starts with kind of a broader discussion. What do we think currently the needs are, and what are the priorities among those needs? So again, I'd be interested in your thoughts about how we would, when and how we have that conversation. So instead of having the budget come to us and we start zeroing in on the specific proposals, or the specific potential warrant articles, before we do that, we have a broad agreement of what we think the key things are that should be reflected in the budget. I mean, particularly for any new spending.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with that at all, but the key is we have to do that at the same time. We have to talk about the resources required to do it. I mean, to have priorities without addressing the resource issue is fruitless.
Actually, Tim, you're going to be there tomorrow presenting town hall budget. How is that looking? What are we going to have in that?
You're muted. He's muted on purpose, I think.
Well, I am proposing that we look at some additional positions in town, help for the town accountant's office, frankly, help for the selectman's office. I think we need a dedicated HR position at some point in the future. So I've got proposals for that. This may not be the year that such things get funded, but I think they should be on the table. And I think I've talked before about succession planning. I think we haven't done a lot in that area, but within the next 3 to 5 years, I can think of 5 or 6 department heads that are going to be elsewhere. So we need to, put a plan in place at the very least, or recognize that that's going to happen, and it's going to change how we do business. So that's some of what I'm going to talk with the FinCom about tomorrow, I think.
And is there an IT position in there too?
There is. Alan and I are still working on the job description of that.
Okay,
with
but
Mark.
that would go into the town hall budget, no?
Yes.
Yeah, oh, it would.
As
Yeah.
part of the town hall budget?
Yeah.
So, HR, IT, succession. Okay.
You gonna wear your Kevlar underwear?
Yeah, so I mean, back to kind of Barney's point and what I'm hearing. It's nice to think about those priorities, and I just looked back at our sort of goal setting, and one of the top goal setting things was financial sustainability. So we have to recognize, and this is what I've heard, you know, Kate, you were in a lot more of those discussions yesterday than I was, but the fact that we went flat for a year, which was, I believe, the prudent thing to do, is not without a cost, right? And the cost is a great back pressure now on normal increases. Life went on, right? People got increases and costs went up, and we held the budget flat. So we have to brace for a fairly significant, I believe, regardless of, you know, without even hearing from FinCom, I can already tell, you know, a lot of requests for increases. So prioritizing is fine, but everybody, every single department is going to come back with things that they need or deferred because of the flat budget last year. And, you know, part of this is just going to be, maybe it's a broader thing. It's not a priority thing. It's like, how much increase, you know, are we prepared to embrace?
Or how much debt are we willing to take on? One of the ways you do it is you spread the cost out over a lot of years, and you pay interest on it.
Well, I don't know how you
But-
do that on the operational side.
Oh, you don't? Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking more the operate. I mean, we
Yeah.
can certainly kick the can down the road on, you know, the public safety building and HVAC at the school and blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's relatively straightforward, or we can decide to take on some debt. But the operational budget pressures, I think, are going to be quite a lot. And
Yep.
I don't know yet. What are we prepared for, a 5 or 6% increase? You know, I mean, that's something, that's a thought piece I would give you to take home and think about, because that, in a normal year, we're going to go 2 or 3%, and 2 or 3% is 6%. And that's kind of where we're at today. So
Yep.
you got to think about that.
Yeah.
You're a real downer, you know that?
Yeah. He says, you know, this is why you signed up for the assignment. I mean, actually, Alan, you get to pontificate and then leave.
Yeah, I know.
Now
Oh,
he's
well.
just teeing it up for you.
Okay, liaison reports. Do we have any liaison reports?
Well, I've sort of given mine.
Marty.
I'll give a little more context on the school. I spent some time with the school helping them, you know, frame their budget. And I would just say, again, I would just say kind of 4 things about that. One is, as I said at the top, you know, they came in with a 7.5% ask, but if you really dig into that, there are 4 components to what makes that request. One is what I just alluded to, which is the fact that they're coming off a flat budget. And how are they able, and every budget, you know, of course, as we all know, that the majority of their costs are fixed, not fixed price, but, you know,
Salary.
Yeah.
No,
legally binding contracts.
Yeah.
Yep.
Particularly teachers that have a fixed amount of income. Right, okay. So that happened anyway, regardless of the fact that the overall budget was flat. The second piece is, well, how did they do that? Well, they did it the way they always do it, which is they prepaid, in their case last year, $400K of expenses. They're not doing that this year. They don't have it. And so this is it may not be the permanent end. We had a little debate about that in FinCom last night, but it is presently the end of the prepay, which would, regardless of what you think about prepay, it was a practice for many, many years that enabled you to pay forward from a prior year's money to a future year. The year you stop doing that, you have an immediate at least $250,000 that you have to pay for out of current funds, not out of last year's funds. So they're in that now at this time. The third thing is that there are a number of COVID expenses that were not covered by CARES or related financings that they have to absorb and probably have to continue to absorb. And that's a cost that is a temporary cost, but it's a real cost. And then the fourth thing is that the decision was made a couple of years ago to shift $80,000 of technology out of out of the long-term caps into the operating budget. And this is the year it's finally happening. So when you add all those little pieces, you know, like 600,000 of the 800 and so thousand that they need is coming out of these timing events. And I'm not here to say it's good or bad, but we have to it has to be recognized that these events are kind of occurring in a perfect storm type situation. And the remedy, if we don't have the appetite for that kind of an increase, is probably that they have to make some staff reductions. I mean, that, I don't know where that's all going to play, but there's not limited levers that the school has to press, at this point. So. Yeah,
Um,
Thank you.
But there was also discussion last night about, and I didn't write down all the details, but about the state and federal aid to the schools, and that they were hearing that was going to increase actually slightly
Chapter 70.
yeah. And
Yeah,
so,
maybe.
and then the other one was, there are 3 different pots. What are they? I've forgotten, but I didn't write them down. But anyway, I think that's the other piece of this to look at hard. Now, it's really surprising to me if we're going to get more state aid, given the state's budget, but that is what I believe it was Jim, or maybe it was Ann that
Yeah.
reported that back.
The
So
governor
she sent
said
something
that.
today, which I haven't read. So,
Yeah.
the state recognizes that the districts are hurting, so it wouldn't be
Right.
surprising that they
Right,
might come over with some more aid.
Right.
And there are some other mitigating things, as you said, that could make it a little better, but
yeah,
we're
But I-
unfortunate, we're just paying, we have a confluence of things, only
Right.
some of which are COVID that,
Right.
are amounting to that increase.
yeah. I think what Ann had said last night was that it was a 7.48% increase, but of that, she thought the items you mentioned, David, the carry forward and
Yep.
the 80,000 for computers, I
Right.
believe she said that represented, a little like half of it.
No, absolutely. That's absolutely correct.
So it's about a 3 point something percent increase.
Well, it's a $12 million budget, so that means every percent's 120K. I just told you prepay is at least 2% of it. Technology is probably 0.75%.
Right,
So you're at your 3%, and that was my point too. Half of it is stuff that is sort of out of their control.
right,
The other half is, a combination of the fact that we're coming off a flat year budget, and there's COVID, and there's also needs. There's some needs of certain demographic of kids right now where they need more special education. They just need it. Now we could, and what's been presented is a make-buy decision where the school is advocating for hiring a resource as compared with a prior practice of outsourcing it, in other words, out of district. And it's probably a cost-effective decision because one way or the other, the needs of those children have to be accommodated. And the last thing on that point is and this is probably a good thing in the long run, but there's an uptick of enrollment, and it's no surprise. It goes back to our earlier conversation. It's become a desirable town. People who now can work remotely no longer consider Carlisle, out in the White
boonies.
Mountains somewhere, right? And
But they still don't know where it is.
well, they're learning.
Back of beyond is where it is.
they're not
and-
worried about getting on Route 2 and trying
Right,
to.
right.
Yeah,
Right.
so real estate values are going up, which is a good thing. But, and enrollment's going to go up, is going up, which is a good thing. But with that, also comes always some degree of adverse selection. In other words, if you have and I don't want to say this badly because my own kids are on IEPs and I'm, happy to tell you that, but people who have kids with certain needs are going to look for districts that are open to those needs. That's just a fact. And so it's reasonable that we are going to have an increase over the time of, special education expenses to meet those. And that we're seeing it. We're just seeing it. And that's all in the other half. That's all in the 3.5% that's not because of, prepays and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
tighten your belts.
You're on, Barney.
I have a much more prosaic, I guess. Report. It does include, though, a decision, I think, for us as a board. So in my continuing effort, working with Jen and Gary Davis to, try to tighten things up at the transfer station, we have developed we have we've been looking at the construction and debris permit situation that we've had in the past, and we want to change it. So what we've done in the past, just so everybody's up to date, is that although we didn't do this yet last year because we suspended all of that, all of the permitting, but we have said, and I'm reading from the application form, you know, a 1 pickup truck size load was going to cost $50 per load. And then 1 large truck size load, so pickup is considered small, and then whatever's larger than that was a truck size load. We were requiring a permit of $150, a payment of $150, and people would go to the police station and get that permit, and then have to show their permit to somebody at the transfer station in order to be able to dump into the construction and debris bin. And what has been happening in the last at least 4 or 5 years is that we have virtually nobody buying the $150 permit. That either the big, you know, those doing construction projects, developers have, you know, they're hiring separate people to take the trash away to some other place, or people have all been paying just the pickup truck size load at $50. And still it's not been very actively enforced. So our proposal is that we, first of all, we move it to town hall and put it online, just as we've done the residential permit stickers, and that we change the structure so that any small pickup truck load, you'd be required to have a permit. You know, in the past, it's been kind of a very much a, well, somebody eyes what you have in your pickup truck, and if it's not very much, then you just go ahead and dump it and you don't need a permit. I mean, that's kind of Gary's and his staff's approach has been that. And so while it's not going to be a problem for somebody to go and throw a few pieces of wood into the bin, if you're bringing a pickup truck that's half full or more, you'd be expected to get a permit. And that would cost, we'd lower the price from $50 to $25. But that would be expected then of anybody in town, and you'd be required to have a valid, you know, residential sticker as well. But then you have to go buy a permit to dump that load into the construction and debris at $25. Then you'd be given a slip that you'd actually have to turn in to the person at the transfer station. And then for haulers, you know, or somebody that's you know, maybe a local contractor who is actually bringing a serious truckload size full, their permit would cost $50. So the idea would be, we try to really enforce that you need a sticker. You need a 1 load permit every time you want to dump something into that C&D bin, as a way to, frankly, reduce how much goes in there, or at least recover income, because that costs us quite a bit as a town to get rid of those, to empty those bins, have those taken off site. We pay I have the figures actually, which I could pull out how much we pay per ton, but it's not cheap. So, and then I think that's it.
Couldn't there be a way that we do Venmo or PayPal or something?
Yeah.
And the truck comes up and the guys say, whoa, 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 you know. I mean, what are they gonna do? Turn them around, send them back to town hall, and then they have to come back, or they have to know in advance?
Yeah, what it's gonna mean is you're gonna have to plan for it, because it'll mean if you show up on a Saturday morning intending to dump a bunch of stuff that you cleaned out of your, you know, that you did a home repair project and you have all the leftover scraps that you want to get rid of, you're gonna have to plan ahead and get your permit during the week. Which will be as easy to do as it is now to get your residential transfer.
No, but that takes 3 days or more because they have to mail me my permit.
Yeah, but you can do this online, and this is actually going to be set up so that you can print out your,
So you can print it out.
Yeah.
So that will,
yeah,
okay, so it's not like that, it's not like the sticker.
right. And you can still walk into town and get town hall, right, and do it on site. Although we're
Okay.
gonna, the idea would be to really, encourage the online purchase of the permit. This is what really needs to happen is a complete, review of how the transfer station works, because they're all I've started to get some numbers, and I'm working with the recycling committee that's worked on this before, but it's the clear trend line is, for a variety of reasons, is it's costing us more and more to run the transfer station, because we used to get some income from various recyclables. That has shrunk, and in some cases we're now paying money for things that we used to get paid for. So for example, the mixed paper, it costs us to have that removed. And we used to get income from that. So and for example, the things that we allow people to bring and leave at the transfer station for free, TVs, tires, refrigerators, large pieces of furniture, those all cost us to have those then taken away. And we are looking at what other towns do, and they're very few. I haven't found any yet that have a setup like ours that allow people to drop off items like that without paying for them. So
Yeah.
one of the things that Gary is compiling is a list of the most expensive things for us to dispose of and what it actually costs per item. So for instance, per TV, we know it's about $20. So one of the things that we want to look at is, and this would require, Kate, I think some kind of, we'd have to have some kind of ability for people, for this folks at the transfer station to be able to, you come to drop off your TV and it's going to cost you $20 and you can pay for it right then and there. We have to look into all that and how it would work, but just short run, these permits for use of the construction and debris bin have just not been, they've just not been priced right, and they haven't been enforced. And so we're trying to, this is a very small, attempt of trying to do that in this one particular area. So we would like the support or the approval of the select board to make this change in the permit fees for the construction and debris.
Is that written down somewhere?
No.
Can we get it written down?
Uh,
I hate to do things anecdotally, but.
Right, I get you. Do you want, as in the motion to approve of something written that just describes what I just.
Right,
was
yep.
saying, and then a motion to
Yeah.
approve it.
I mean, like how's the truck defined and that kind of stuff, yeah.
Right. Yep, I can, why
Well,
don't we do this at the next meeting?
Okay, fine, yep,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
yeah, I'm in support of the overall, I've long advocated that the transfer station be self-supporting, so.
Well,
I'm
Gary's
in favor.
definitely, moving more in the direction of,
Yeah, I got 2 TVs here that I need to get rid of. I better do it soon.
Me too.
That comes under the heading of insider trading though, right? 'Cause I know it's
Now,
coming.
be careful now. There'll be a photographer out there taking your picture, Kate, at the transfer station.
Oh, no, if she does it within the current rules.
That's
no.
right. If I, you know,
Right,
What
yep.
you have to do is like what the stock guys, the CEOs all say, oh, it was part of a regularly scheduled removal of debris. I
yeah,
know about that rate change.
Okay, yeah, let's put it on the next meeting, Barney, if we can just get that,
Okay.
and maybe get it to us before a meeting so we can look it over. Thank you.
Yep. Will do.
All righty, anybody else? Hearing none, approval of minutes and warrants. I didn't see any minutes, so
I
I
didn't
think
see any minutes either.
I think we just have warrants. So we got 3 warrants tonight.
Thank you for doing that again, Barney.
Yep.
Yes,
No problem.
Very good. Thank you.
and adjournment.
Oh, I move we adjourn.
Sorry, there's no second.
Second.
Everybody's
Second
asleep
it
at the
twice.
wheel.
All those in favor, roll call vote.
Arnold, I.
Lewis, I.
Model I.
Reed, I.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. Good meeting.
Okay, give Barbara our best when you talk to her.
Will do. Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
Yes, very
Thank
much,
you
Barbara.
all.